Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
How many times has it been we've shoveled this year now?
Too many times.
It's got to be done.
Hey. A snow day for some. A messy commute for others. The blast of winter that's pummeled the Lower Mainland and what's coming next. Also,
had the pipes burst and flood the entire apartment.
From floods to fires and extreme cold, why BC homes need to keep up with the reality of climate change. And
The reality here is, yes, it's a huge inequity.
new questions around the province's use of more than 1 million rapid tests it has in stock.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. It's been a challenging day on the roads as the heavy snowfall coated everything. And then the freezing rain, all of it leading to slippery streets and transit delays. And as John Hernandez reports, we may not be out of the woods just yet.
Oh, it's wild out. It's wild. The snow, it's super slippery out today. We've seen a bunch of cars stuck.
Another morning, another slippery commute.
Getting out here was a struggle this morning because all the roads were messed up.
I left earlier to make it work.
With warnings to avoid essential travel, some braved the slippery conditions on the roads. Many others chose public transit. This, the scene at several SkyTrain stations where cars were backed up because of the weather.
This train will be out of service at 22nd Station. Please gather your belongings and disembark this train.
Commuter conditions that continued to deteriorate through the day. The Fraser Bridge shut down mid-afternoon for winter maintenance, and warnings from the province that the Portman could also close. Environment Canada says the mix of snow and freezing rain is extremely hazardous.
So treacherous weather, difficult to deal with for transportation, heavy loading on the trees, of course, because it's very kind of soupy or slushy, slurpy-like consistency, this snow.
Conditions that are also posing problems for BC Hydro, which has reported thousands of customers on the coast and on the island are without power. And with winds expected to pick up through the evening, more blackouts could be on the way.
So perhaps power outages are in some people's near future, to be aware of that.
A cold cycle that's taking a toll on some.
I like snow for a few days only.
Yeah, it's nice. It's just when it melts and freezes.
Temperatures are expected to rise in the coming days, but forecasters say people shouldn't get too comfortable as the melt could freeze up Friday into Saturday. A frigid reminder that the winter season has really just begun. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
You don't have any skis on there, do you, Dan? Get around tonight?
Not at the moment.
Well, clearly,
it's one of those days where we're all... Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, exactly. One of those days where we're all just trying to get around, trying to get somewhere, if it's even possible. A lot going on our roads. I know you're going to tell us more about that, aren't you?
Yes, indeed. As John mentioned, if you can find an alternate route to get around, that's the best way to do it if you can. As he said, the Fraser Bridge is still closed in both directions as crews try to clear off snow and ice and debris off of those cables high above. The good news is the Portman Bridge is still open, although the Transportation Ministry warned that it may close too. And we remember those ice bombs that crumpled windshields some years ago. TransLink says various bus detours have been cleared, but outside of the Lower Mainland, we have seen that Drive BC announced a short time ago a travel advisory for the Fraser Valley due to snow, winter conditions, freezing rain. Essentially, if you do not have to be on the roads, don't go. It affects several highways there. The Coquihalla Highway was closed in both directions just north of the summit because of a crash. Highway 3 also closed for some time just east of Hope because of downed hydro lines. It was slow going for pedestrians all over the Lower Mainland today, as well as drivers and those on two wheels, especially on the side streets where ice has been forming. The rain has turned that light, fluffy snow that we're not used to into the damp, heavy stuff that we are used to. So that made for some tired backs when you were shoveling it. And it could be a concern for building roofs and coverings, especially with that extra weight. That was much the same in Victoria today, at least with getting around. Slower, slushy streets, snowy sidewalks, and BC Transit buses were also running behind, according to some passengers. Meanwhile, Burnaby RCMP have a reminder for drivers before they head out. Clear all the snow off of your cars. Mounties say in a 3-hour safety blitz this morning, they pulled over more than 150 drivers and wrote 11 tickets. Some drivers had just a small, tiny window through the snow on their cars. Others had inches still on the roofs. Officers, in fact, loaned them brushes to clear them off. Some said they knew it was a problem, knew it was a hazard, but they had to get to work on time. Cops say that's no excuse. Drive safe. Anita.
All right, Dan Burrett live tonight. Thank you. And this excessive snow also proving to be challenging for mail delivery. Canada Post has issued a red delivery service alert for today. This means it's suspending delivery for the city of Vancouver, all of Vancouver Island, and all of the Fraser Valley. Delivery will start up once again once conditions approve and it is safe for workers. Canada Post is asking everyone to make sure walkways and driveways are clear so mail carriers can get access eventually. And the heavy snow has brought trees down as well, closing some popular attractions. Van Dusen Gardens is shut down because of several trees that came crashing down. The Festival of Lights is already done for the season, but the Botanical Garden still attracts lots of visitors. No word on when it may reopen. Time now to check in with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. And Joe, are we through the worst of it?
Anita, we're through the heavy snow for most of Metro Vancouver, but this event very much still ongoing. I want to take you to the latest satellite and radar shot because the precipitation is actually moving back in from east to west, filling in as we speak here in North Van. That heavy rain has started to fall again. Everywhere that you see the pink, and this is the past 3 hours across Metro Vancouver, that's the rain-snow mix and or freezing rain. So a huge swath from basically East Van through the Tri-Cities area, through to the Fraser Valley, possibly getting freezing rain right now. Now the pink is also, again, it could be a slushy mix. That's what the radar picks up, but messy on the roads regardless. The temperatures are staying just above the freezing mark. So for most of Metro Vancouver, that'll be rain, but we're on the cusp for lower lying areas out towards the valley and eastern sections for the next couple of hours. So heed that advice from officials if you can to stay indoors for a couple more hours. And then we have one more impact from this storm system. So rain through the overnight, you can see that timestamp in yellow. 7 a.m. tomorrow, we're going to see a big wind shift. Winds coming in from the west, Anita, and gusting to 70, 80 kilometers per hour, lining up with a king tide. They'll take you through possible impacts tomorrow morning and the forecast ahead coming up.
Yeah, I'm sure not great for trees. We've already seen a bunch down today.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Okay. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
The weather update is brought to you by Sophia Financial Group of Raymond James Limited. Register now for our free Cash Flow Connection series at sophiaevents.ca.
Well, the name of the game today with the weather, be prepared to wait, and that has applied to everything COVID related as well. This was the scene at the main testing site in Vancouver. Cars stretching down a snowy 33rd Avenue and down Cambie Street as well. But there were also long lines across the Lower Mainland at vaccination sites giving boosters. This was the scene at the Vancouver Convention Centre, where people reported waiting hours for their shots. Vancouver Coastal Health says there was a shortage of staff because of the weather. One would-be vaccine recipient told CBC his booking time was canceled and the whole thing changed to first come, first serve. And Adrian Dix is defending the province's testing efforts, saying Omicron has pushed all provinces to their max. BC has reached its capacity for the daily limit of roughly 20,000 tests. In addition to that demand, he says 50,000 vaccine doses went into arms today.
But with Omicron and the sheer scope of what we're seeing, a 9-fold increase in active cases, 9 times in a very short period of time, obviously everywhere, the testing capacity is stretched. The healthcare system is delivering at a very high level right now in terms of the quantity and quality of care that's being provided.
And Dix and Dr. Bonnie Henry will be giving a COVID update tomorrow at 11:30. They'll be joined by Jennifer Whiteside, who is the Minister of Education. We will have that streaming live on our website, cbc.ca/BC. Now, hospitalizations related to COVID-19 are on the rise again, with 324 patients in hospital, and 90 of those are in intensive care. There have been 16 new healthcare facility outbreaks for a total of 37 facilities with ongoing outbreaks. The province is reporting more than 3,200 new cases of the virus and 3 more deaths. Now, dozens of Surrey RCMP officers are off the job because of illness or exposure to COVID-19. At least 42 members are off work, and that number could climb. It's already more than double the number who were absent yesterday. Another 12 municipal staffers who work with the police are also off. Sergeant Eleanor Sturko tells the CBC a wave of Omicron has swept through the detachment, but she assures the RCMP is still able to serve the public and respond to emergencies.
One of the worries does not have to be whether or not help is going to come if you need it. Our ability at this time to provide police services hasn't been compromised.
She says the Surrey RCMP workforce is made up of roughly 1,000 officers and civilians. Elsewhere in the province, mildly better news for first responders in Prince Rupert. 5 firefighters have returned to work. Out of a staff of 20, 40% are still off because of COVID-19. That's not as dire as the 60% absent yesterday. The northern coastal town has a population of roughly 12,000 people. There are new questions tonight around more than 1 million rapid tests still being held on to by the province. Mira Baines is looking at the inequity this lack of access creates, as some can pay to buy their own and some simply can't.
This Victoria pharmacy is selling rapid test kits for $25 each, and they're flying off shelves.
We got in 500 tests less than 2 days ago, and they're gone now.
While the demand has been high, the province is giving out rapid test kits at COVID-19 testing facilities after people have been waiting in line for hours. And while not perfect, sometimes giving out false results, rapid tests are being distributed to every resident who wants one in Ontario and Alberta. This public health expert is questioning BC's approach as COVID cases rise.
Yes, it's a huge inequity. Those that can afford it have access to it, and they've probably purchased them. And those that don't are out of luck. And those folks might be waiting 3 to 5 hours in a lineup.
The federal government announced $140 million in rapid tests will be distributed to provinces. There are questions what BC will do with them. Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry's comments Tuesday are under scrutiny.
That is an urban myth that there's millions of rapid tests in a warehouse somewhere.
These figures from the Ministry of Health show that already, without the latest influx of rapid tests, BC has more than 1.3 million tests still in its inventory. Henry has explained these rapid tests are being given out at COVID testing sites, used at long-term care facilities, and distributed to remote and rural communities, including First Nations. The BC School Trustees Association has said plans are being made for K-12 schools to use rapid tests.
We are working closely together, and we expect to know by the end of this week what that rapid testing strategy will be, how it will be utilized in schools in order to make sure that we minimize any impact to in-person learning.
11 million rapid test kits are coming later this month from the federal supply, as well as 6 million from a local vendor that are also part of the federal supply.
Why were we not distributing when we knew that there's more supply? So this idea of scarcity is very unfortunate, and it's quite bizarre.
Dr. Bonnie Henry has said BC will be expanding its COVID testing once those rapid test kits arrive. But the question is, when will those plans be shared with the public? Mira Baines, CBC News, Victoria.
Interior Health is targeting gyms it says are defying public health orders to close. 5 have so far been hit with warnings. The health authority is not saying which gyms or where they're located, but says it's followed up with a total of 15 so far and will take what it calls enforcement actions if necessary, with the most serious consequence being a forced closure. In that region, RCMP have handed out $2,300 in fines to gyms and fitness centers that are refusing to shut their doors during this latest wave of the pandemic. There is a petition calling on the province to reopen gyms and asking for data surrounding transmissions. Interior Health says it recognizes the many health benefits of exercise, including mental well-being, but it urges people to find alternatives to slow the spread of the Omicron variant. And BC Seniors Advocate says people living in long-term care should be able to choose who they're designated as their essential visitor.
I've been recommending this for over a year. People agree we should have it, yet here we are.
With the latest pandemic protections, the province limited long-term care residents to a single essential visitor to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Most seniors, however, don't have an officially designated essential visitor on file, meaning they get no visitors. This means in many cases, decisions around who is essential and who is not are made by staff. Mackenzie says that can have serious negative consequences for residents and their families.
We heard all these stories from wave one, when we essentially did what we're doing now, which is lock down essential visitors only, meaning most people don't get one. And we heard residents not eating, not getting out of their room, not getting out of their bed. Some are going to fear they're never going to see the person again.
Mackenzie says the process should be simplified to let residents choose for themselves. Similar policies are already in place for several other provinces. As the pandemic enters its third year since COVID-19 was first identified, you'll notice a change this week in the way we report the daily numbers that are released by the province. Across the CBC, we are shifting the emphasis from daily cases to look at other metrics. Now, to make sense of the reasons why we're doing this, let's bring in Justin McElroy, who, of course, is always looking very closely at all the data. So, Justin, why this change now?
Yeah, Anita, it's Omicron, right? We've been seeing in jurisdictions across the world cases spiking to numbers we haven't seen before, and we're seeing it in BC as well. You see the red line right here of active cases shooting right up, same with the rolling average as well. But what's happening at the same time is that people are not able to be tested right now with PCR tests, the only official way that the province tracks those numbers in the same way. And so we don't have a handle on just how accurate those numbers are for transmission. And we can see this in BC if we take a look at each region. Now, if you take a look, the red line here is Vancouver Coastal Health. And over the past 2 weeks, we've been static for the number of official cases. Well, you can see it rising everywhere else. You can see it rising in every other province. What's happened in Coastal Health is simply there's no longer enough capacity to test everyone who needs to, not by a long shot. So we're going to see this in other health regions as well. But it means that simply looking at that number and being able to use it as a proxy to understand what's going to happen with hospitalizations and deaths, as well as generally whether it's going up or down in the community, is just something we're not able to do at the moment.
Yeah, makes sense for sure. So what are the key numbers that we are going to highlight going forward?
Well, there's a few of them. We're going to look at the positivity rate for cases. We're going to be looking at deaths. And importantly, we're going to be looking at hospitalizations. And we've shown this chart a bunch of times as well. It's the total number in BC. You can see a big spike happening with the red number. That's the total number of hospitalizations in BC. That number is going to continue to go up in the next few weeks. But we can still use case numbers overall to show the difference between cases and those in critical care. If you take a look at this chart, the red line is the rolling average of cases. The blue line are people in critical care. And those two lines have sort of tracked exactly the same for most of the pandemic. But you see, it's shot up for average cases over the last few weeks. We're still not seeing that yet with critical cases. This is what people talk about when they say, is Omicron more mild? It just means that a much lower percentage of people that get COVID are having to go to hospital or especially go to critical care. We'll watch with interest over the next couple of weeks whether that remains the case. But as the pandemic shifts, we have to change the way that we track it as well for people to understand both where we are right now and where we're going.
Justin McElroy, thank you. Well, this cold weather has many wondering how equipped the province is for extreme climate events, from flooding brought on by frozen pipes to overburdened heating systems. As Brady Strachan tells us, home and business owners are learning their buildings are not built for prolonged cold.
It came from that far corner, and from that corner flooded our entire unit.
It wasn't the way Rodney Hobson wanted to kick off the new year.
A call in the middle of the night that his karate dojo was flooding.
I opened up the front door. We had about 4 inches of water across our entire facility and started pouring out all over the road, all over the parking lot.
A prolonged cold snap caused pipes to freeze and rupture, sending water gushing.
It's pretty overwhelming in the moment.
His is one of hundreds of buildings affected by flooding during the cold spell that saw record-breaking temperatures across BC.
And this is where the plumbing comes out of the exterior wall and has an opportunity, and it's usually the high-risk area.
He says poorly insulated pipes are the main culprit. Everything from garden hose taps to fire suppression systems in attics.
This year we're seeing the burst pipes and the freeze up. The calls have just kept coming. So yeah, it's significant.
In Vancouver, many people living in older buildings find their heating systems don't cut it.
4 days without heat, so it was pretty darn cold.
Alexandria Brown was forced to stay with her brother to keep warm. Just a few months ago, she faced the extreme heat dome without air conditioning.
Going forward, I think we have to modernize and kind of adapt to our changing temperatures.
Climate researchers agree. Governments and property owners need to plan for extreme weather all year round.
We need to make sure that we're building homes and roads in ways that they're going to be resilient to the floods and wildfires and heat waves of tomorrow.
Back in Kelowna, karate continues in half the dojo while a restoration crew rips out the floor in the other half.
We're probably looking 4 months.
Part of the work will be improved insulation around piping to prepare for future extreme cold weather. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna, British Columbia.
New rules in Quebec for the unvaccinated. Why, if you're not jabbed, you can't enter a liquor store, and why that might just be the start. Coming up. Thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream. With COVID-19 cases continuing to rise, you might be wondering what mask you should be wearing. Homemade, medical, N95, and what's more important, the fit or the filtration.
Picture this, it is 2020 and Canada's Chief Public Health Officer says that wearing non-medical masks can help stop COVID-19 from spreading. So now masks start selling out everywhere and you go buy something like this. Is it fabulous? Absolutely. But is it gonna keep the virus completely out? Probably not. And now with this new Omicron variant, we're hearing things like triple layer, N95, KN95. So what does that mean for your old cloth masks? Well, experts say that there are 3 types of masks. There's the cloth mask, there's the medical masks, and there's the respirators like the N95s. Now, these offer the most protection, and these ones offer the least. And if you can't get your hands on one of these, then you're gonna wanna double up on this.
If you're looking for an N95, you don't need to go out and get an N95. You can wear a double medical mask, and double medical mask is almost just as good as an N95. You also want to save those N95 for healthcare providers that are doing high-risk procedures in the emergency department or in the ICU.
So some experts say that it's kind of like wearing your seatbelt. This mask here would be like having the waist strap on. This mask adds the chest strap, and this one, voila, the entire ensemble plus the airbags. But even more important than the filtration, according to Dr. Trevor Jane, is the fit. So it should fit snug around your nose, and these gaps on the sides here, he says they're not ideal, but masks fit everyone's face differently. This means that wearing it below your nose or pulling it down to talk defeats the purpose. Face shields, spit guards, scarves instead of masks are a no-go. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer says, as a general rule, just wear the best mask that you can get your hands on. And making sure that whatever mask that is, making sure it fits right is key. And even wearing your homemade cloth mask is better than wearing no mask at all. Chien Desjardins, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Quebec is facing some of the worst impacts from COVID-19, and that has now prompted some of the most strict restrictions in the country for the unvaccinated. As Alison Northcott shows us, not being able to go to the liquor store could just be the beginning.
Critical care staff at this Montreal hospital are scrambling to keep up.
We are in an absolute war.
And this ICU doctor is urging people to get vaccinated because many of his COVID patients are not.
The kinds of people we're seeing get critically ill with COVID, which is now predominantly Omicron, are the unvaccinated.
Quebec's health minister says more than half of the province's COVID ICU patients are unvaccinated, even though they're just 10% of the population.
I'm just saying that if you don't want to get vaccinated, stay home.
So the province is expanding where you need proof of vaccination, barring unvaccinated people from liquor and cannabis stores.
Whatever means it takes for people to understand the gravity.
Dubé says if it weren't for those unvaccinated patients, Quebec's hospitals wouldn't be as stretched.
We didn't really hit the peak yet. So what's coming in the next week is actually quite scary.
The province is giving people until January 18th to prepare.
I think you should have a vaccine passport to get in everywhere.
I think it's a little discriminatory to the people who aren't vaccinated, so I'm not for it.
People who are unvaccinated could face further restrictions in the weeks ahead, as the provincial government says it plans to expand the vaccine passports to even more non-essential services.
It is a new burden that small businesses will have to face, and they are really fragile right now.
During the first wave lockdowns, Quebec liquor and cannabis stores stayed open as essential services. With the right support, the restrictions are manageable, says this advocate for people with addictions.
If you want alcohol and you can't and you don't have your vaccine passport, you can ask a friend to go. You can go to the grocery stores.
The province plans to go even further, making proof of vaccination require not just 2, but 3 doses, but only once more Quebecers have had a chance to get that extra shot. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Some of the now infamous Quebec influencers who partied on board a Sunwing flight to Cancun are back in Canada. About 15 passengers arrived on an Air Canada flight late last night, somewhere destined for about 2 hours some were detained for about 2 hours after being released. Those involved in the original flight could face thousands in fines. In a statement released this morning, the organizer says he is learning from his experience and that a plan to bring the entire group home fell apart after Sunwing refused to provide meals on the return flight. It's been 1 year since the world looked in at horror at the U.S. Capitol. Rioters took the place of politicians in the United States halls of power. What we've learned and the impact on Canada as well is next.
The music is Celtic. It comes from the British Isles. The musicians are Canadians. They call themselves Spirit of the West. They've taken this traditional form of music and added their own touch, with influences from folk, rock, and jazz.
Although traditional music has been played for hundreds and hundreds of years, and there still is a very strong traditional force, what we're trying to do is take an element of that traditional music and play it in a way that a lot of the other people, a lot of the younger people that have never been exposed to it, and some of the older people that maybe have drifted away from it can relate to it now, today, with sort of a vitality and a fun sort of energy.
Spirit of the West has been together for 2 years. The band members live around Vancouver. Jay Knutson used to play in rock bands. The man with the drum, Jeffrey Kelly, used to be with a band that played Irish music. John Mann's background is in musical theater. For all three, Celtic music has become a very strong influence.
With us, I think the excitement in the Celtic part of the show that we do is definitely the energy, because as Jay was saying earlier, you can get a jig and a reel, and people can kind of grasp onto it, and there's something there that they can really grasp onto and just take. And for us, it's just an incredible energy up there, and you can just find it in the music and just go with it.
In adding its own touch, Spirit of the West has stepped outside the conventions of Celtic music. The instruments the band uses are different than what you'd see in a traditional Celtic band. That's lifted some of the limitations of playing true to tradition.
True traditional music is just pipes, fiddle, and flute, and whistle, and there's no guitars, so I just missed that rhythm. And when I started getting together with Jay, I realized that it can be much more melodic when you have the rhythm section there.
Spirit of the West generally plays at clubs and folk festivals. In the past 2 years, the band has built up a following. This summer, they're booked to play at the prestigious Winnipeg Folk Festival, where their unique sound is expected to be a hit.
Today, U.S. lawmakers marked the first anniversary of the U.S. Capitol breach, mayhem inside the halls of power. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Katie Simpson witnessed the attack firsthand. And tonight, as some Americans try to turn the page, she shows us what's changed and what hasn't.
Solemn reminders of the violence that nearly upended U.S. democracy hang over Capitol Hill. A quiet day, save for the heavy police presence and the few Americans wanting to mark this moment in person.
I'm still shaken. I'm standing here right now, and the emotions start to well back up.
The president walked through the same hallways invaded by rioters to give the nation an update on the state of democracy, acknowledging the scars run deep, admitting the danger is not over.
We must decide, what kind of nation are we going to be? Are we going to be a nation that accepts political violence as a norm?
In a speech that rallied his base and inflamed his opponents, Joe Biden forcefully attacked former President Donald Trump, laying out the facts proving the 2020 election was not stolen. That this reminder is even necessary is revealing. Democracy remains fractured, all, as Biden says, because of Trump.
His bruised ego matters more to him than our democracy or our Constitution. He can't accept he lost.
Democrats and some Republicans fear violence will be repeated after future elections, since millions of Americans swayed by Trump's so-called big lie now believe voting systems are corrupt.
Unfortunately, too many in my own party are embracing that former president, are looking the other way, are minimizing the danger. That's how democracies die.
But as long as Trump remains popular with the Republican base, expect sitting lawmakers to continue embracing that narrative.
We were trying to fortify our country against fraud that we're still very concerned about.
These Republicans say Biden is dividing the nation.
Congresswoman, do you take any personal responsibility to help spread the
There is a press conference at 2:15. There is a press conference.
Seemingly unconcerned, they are relying on a false claim to make their point.
There is a press conference.
In America right now, there's no agreed set of facts around the election or the Capitol riot. Whether Trump runs again or not, that may be his lasting impact on democracy. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
With investigations and indictments underway, many are still grappling with the consequences of the riot and what it means for the future of American democracy. But it also brings other democracies into question. For more on this, we're joined by UBC political scientist Max Cameron. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
How do you think democratic institutions like the U.S. and Canada will hold against rampant conspiracy?
It's a great question. And as soon as Trump was elected, I think a lot of people deposited their hope and their faith in institutions. The belief was the United States has a remarkable constitution with a separate election of the Congress and the executive, independent Supreme Court, a professional civil service, and a non-political or non-deliberative military. And the hope was that those institutions would prevent the rise of tyranny. And when Donald Trump attempted to interrupt the transfer of power from one democratically elected government to another, those institutions helped, but only just barely. And I think what this really underscores is that it's important to have good institutions, but it's also important to have good people, people of character and judgment who are concerned, committed to the common good, and care about the fate of democracy, and don't take partisanship to such an extreme that they're willing to wreck the system in order to maintain their political power.
Well, and what effects do you think that the riots have had on Canada, not just before, but even now?
Well, these riots were more than just riots. I mean, this was an attempted self-coup. This was an effort by the executive branch of government to manipulate people to interrupt the peaceful transfer of government. That's shocking. It's absolutely shocking in an established democracy, in one of our oldest democracies, in one of our exemplary democracies, to have that kind of behavior, which is far more typical of what we see in places like Russia or Peru or around the world where democratic institutions are much less well established. And so it's a warning to all of us that democracy can't be taken for granted in no country in the world. We always have to recommit ourselves to the values and principles of democracy, to re-articulate them and to honor them, and to figure out how we can create conditions under which democracy will thrive in the future.
Well, that being said, then, do you think a riot like that can happen here?
I actually think that it's extremely unlikely. I think one of the things that's really important to remember is that what happened on January the 6th wasn't just a one-off event, something that came like a bolt from the blue. It's been years in the making, perhaps decades in the making. It reflects a growing polarization of American society, polarization around class and race, deepening income inequality, a sense of frustration with government and the inability of government to do things, fears about the global economy and being left behind. In other words, there are deep, deep roots to that. Now, to some degree, we share some of that malaise. We've also seen in Canada a rise of inequality. We've also seen polarization and greater instability, often driven by social media. That said, we've got a robust public healthcare system, as our pandemic response, I really think has shown. We've got a good public education system. We've got not the high level of inequality, and critically, we don't have the influence of big money in politics. We've taken big money out of politics, and that's an absolutely critical factor because it really is one of the drivers of polarization and extremism in the United States.
UBC political scientist Max Cameron, thank you.
My pleasure, thank you.
Coming up, the research on what even casual drinking might be doing to your body. And at 6:38, a live look down Georgia Street, downtown Vancouver. The snow has come and now the big melt. There's not much on the ground there. Johanna breaks down what's next and the weekend ahead. The Scotties Tournament of Hearts is coming to Kamloops in 2023.
This is one we've really been angling for, and thank you to Curl Canada for awarding this to the city of Kamloops. We'll be there for the country in February next year and looking forward to it.
Kamloops, of course, the tournament capital of BC, and the mayor says the curling tournament could inject $5 million into the local economy, and adds that the city will be looking for about 400 volunteers. The winner will represent Canada at the Women's World Curling Championship. This year's tournament gets underway later this month in Thunder Bay. Time now for another check-in with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. Joe, have you ever curled?
I have tried it once. In fact, just 2 years ago for the first time. I wasn't very good, but it was really fun. How about you?
No, I haven't, but I keep meaning to. Every time we do stories about it, I want to get out there and check it out. So hopefully soon. We'll see.
Let's put it on our winter 2022 post-pandemic hopeful checklist. I'll hold you to that. It's a good indoor winter activity. So no matter the weather, you can enjoy it safely inside. But yeah, I kind of forgot about curling. I think I got to brush up my skills, my one-time skills. Okay, let's get you through the next snowfall event. It's nothing like the one that we're still dealing with right now, but there is one more shot of snow Friday night as temperatures drop one more time before we see a big change to the weather pattern. Let me get you through the satellite and radar first. Just a reminder that we are still dealing with in pink that mix of rain, snow, and possibly freezing rain tonight. We are still looking at additional snowfall accumulations tonight. It is warm enough that most of Metro Vancouver is seeing that as rain through the overnight and through Friday. But east of Chilliwack, we're still getting accumulations sea to sky. We could be talking totals close to 40 centimeters, and same story for higher elevations of the island tonight. This is the low that's sweeping through, pushing a lot of snow to higher elevations, both mountain ranges, the Rockies getting hammered, Highway 3 through the mountain passes in the southeastern sections of the province looking to get 35 centimeters. So this is an all southern half of the province story over the next 24 hours. Now, behind this low, as I mentioned earlier, we will be watching for some big winds tomorrow morning that will line up with a king tide here. So our usual suspects are at westerly facing shores, may get some localized flooding tomorrow morning with those big winds. Temperatures still quite cold, by the way, across places like Prince George and Fort St. John, where an extreme warning remains in place for the piece. Okay, just breaking down that week ahead for tomorrow, but then look at those temperatures overnight. So any lingering precip Friday night might be falling as snow for Metro Vancouver. At this point, it looks like precip will be tapering off. We'll have to keep an eye on that system that will linger through Saturday morning. After that, Anita, look at that, a temperature trend that is much more seasonal for Vancouver, whether we like it or not.
I like it.
I thought so. Almost there.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
Well, just a few days into the new year, and some of those resolutions are probably getting put to the test. A common one is to drink less alcohol, and it's one you might want to stick to. As Johanna Wagstaffe shows us, even moderate drinking comes with a risk of cancer.
It's not a secret, but it may as well be. Alcohol. Any amount of alcohol can cause cancer.
Oh, I did not know that.
This is like the first time I'm hearing about it.
I didn't know that. Cancer's scary.
The truth is scary. Alcohol is a level 1 carcinogen, right up there with tobacco and asbestos. It's one of the top 3 causes of preventable cancer. So why aren't Canadians being warned about it?
There's a lot of misinformation out there. Bottom line is we're in the dark and the industry likes it that way.
Tim Stockwell is a scientist with the Canadian Institute for Substance Use Research at the University of Victoria. He wants people to know the truth.
We probably think alcohol's good for you in moderation, and the industry's been very strong at promoting that message.
Is there any safe amount of alcohol?
Well, nothing's completely safe. Even drinking 1 drink a day increases your risk of some cancers, including if you're a woman, breast cancer, but also cancers of the digestive system. And the risk increases with every drink you take.
Kathy Andrews had no idea that the wine she enjoyed most nights before she got pregnant was dangerous. The Vancouver resident ran into the truth after she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2016.
Some of the risk factors for me was that I'd been through IVF with my child and then pregnancy, as well as a stressful lifestyle and drinking, not exercising enough. So all of those things I think played a role.
When you look back now, how much did you know about the risk alcohol carries?
Well, very little. I think there's a lot of mixed messages in the media about alcohol and how it actually can be quite good for you, especially for your heart. What I discovered was that there's quite a lot of research around the connection between alcohol and breast cancer.
And what did you think when you read that?
Why don't I know this?
Most Canadians don't know that their cocktail should come with a cancer warning, and drinking is so normalized, so celebrated, the truth is hard to swallow. Alcohol was linked to 7,000 new cancer cases in Canada in 2020 alone. And those studies that suggest drinking can be good for you, they've been debunked. Dr. Fawad Iqbal is a radiation oncologist at the Durham Regional Cancer Centre in Oshawa, Ontario.
I treat common cancers, treat lung cancer, breast cancer, and colorectal cancers. And I've never, ever had a lung cancer patient ask me, did smoking cause my cancer? Whereas breast cancer and colorectal cancer, pretty much most people don't know that alcohol causes cancer.
What do you think about that?
It's shocking, I guess I would say. Like, we have warning labels on everything I can think of. I bought my kids fishing rods this summer. Their fishing rods had warning labels that says, this fishing rod can cause cancer. Whereas, a level 1 carcinogen that is everywhere has no particular warnings on it. The CMA should advocate for explicit labeling of alcoholic beverages, warning of carcinogenic risk to the consumer.
Iqbal has drafted a proposal to the Canadian Medical Association and has reached out to Ontario's Liquor Board, provincial and federal health authorities, as well as to the Prime Minister.
Why is this so important to you?
I don't like when people are lied to, including myself. This toxin is there for everybody to consume, and nobody's warning you.
Why do you think it's not out there?
Money. It boils down to money.
What do you mean?
Alcohol is a $1.5 trillion a year industry. They'll lose money. That's a heavy lobby group, and money wins at the end of the day.
Money won in the Yukon in 2017. This is where the first study of alcohol cancer labels was tried but barely got tested. Less than a month after researchers put warning labels on alcohol spelling out the cancer risk, they came off under pressure from the alcohol industry.
There's examples of emails from the liquor industry.
Stockwell was one of the study leaders.
The information about cancer was alarmist and misleading.
He has the emails from industry representatives to the Yukon government, claiming the cancer labels were defamatory. The territory, he says, couldn't afford a costly legal battle, so the cancer warning labels were pulled.
Why was the cancer word so problematic, you think?
Well, I think because it's not a good image for their product. You don't need to be a marketing expert to say it's a no-no, to say if you drink this, it might give you cancer.
The alcohol industry continues to evade questions about the cancer risk. We asked Beer Canada, Spirits Canada, and Wine Growers Canada whether they accept the link between alcohol and cancer and whether they believe they have a responsibility to inform consumers of that risk. All three focus their answers on the need to drink responsibly and in moderation. Spirits Canada also referred to the discredited research of the health benefits of drinking alcohol.
Alcohol causes cancer.
The truth may be inconvenient to industry, but awareness is slowly spreading. In Australia, a graphic public health campaign lays out the cancer risk. This one from the US is a stark warning to women about the risk of breast cancer. And just before the pandemic, British Columbia's Fraser Health Authority ran posters spelling out the cancer risks to everyone. And the Yukon study the industry tried to suppress, it's being cited by researchers around the world because it proves information does have an impact. Even though the cancer labels were taken off early, people remembered them and the other labels that stayed on. By the end of the study, alcohol sales dropped by 7%. Another key finding?
People were furious that this existential threat that is masquerading as something safe and glamorous and normal, and it's slowly killing people. Anyone who understands those facts would feel there's a moral obligation on the government to tell its citizens about these risks.
Several European countries are considering cancer warning labels on alcohol. We asked Health Canada if it plans to do the same. It says it continues to fund research into the best ways to inform Canadians of the various harms associated with alcohol use, and says updates to the current national low-risk drinking guidelines and standard drink information are coming.
And make an informed choice.
Andrews says there is no time to waste.
People do need to know, and I think it's a deterrent if you know.
Would it have changed anything for you?
Definitely, yes. I would have abstained or drank a whole lot less, a lot sooner. Now you got it.
She's grateful that she's recovering, but she wants people to know more than she did.
You can cut their lives short and take them away from the people that love them. People putting really dangerous stuff in their bodies, and they don't know. And it's not worth it. Yeah. It's not worth it.
Knowing the risks, she says, means knowing how much you're willing to risk too.
Exactly.
Johanna Wagstaffe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Going up, one last ride for an historic elevator in Calgary. A journey into another era next.
The first piece ended up in the fire eventually, but I moved on to the next one and the next one, and here I am today. My name is Cameron Garby, and business name is KG Woodcraft. Well, I've been drawing since I was a kid. I got into painting in high school. 5 years ago, a friend of mine gave me a set of chisels and said, "Hey, I think you should try carving. I think you'd be pretty good at it." And I basically dropped everything else. I wanted to try it. I was talking about it, and actually a few of my family members pitched in. They bought me a entry-level homeowner's chainsaw. And then I went out to a friend's farm and carved a teepee out of a log. And the first couple summers I only did a couple pieces, but it wasn't until this summer that I was actually busy chainsaw carving all summer. I'm a bit of a tool junkie, so I'm on to my third chainsaw, and got my big one for blocking out the tree. I've got a smaller one with the power groover on it for fine texture and detail, and then I got my real light one with my carving bar on it. They take different bars, so you can only reach so far into the tree. So there's a lot of tooling involved, and I do some work with the side grinders and die grinders as well. I get pictures of the tree, get some ideas, and then I do all my sketches beforehand, and they're original sketches that I draw from scratch. Eagles, I did a piece in front of a church, so that was a dove holding a Bible with some symbolism tied into it. Another piece was for Treaty 4, so that was a pair of shaking hands symbolizing the signing of the treaty. So whether it's nature themed or something to do with our history, or something for fun that just people relate to that's more private in their backyard. It's really all over the place. The handmade pieces are definitely more artistic creations that I have in my mind, more so, whereas the chainsaw carving is almost always commissioned or on-site. The inspiration from those definitely from my travels, and really just the life experience, and the experience that is life. When people sort of ask me what my pieces mean, I would sooner ask them what it means to them, because I'm always interested to hear that first.
A workhorse of a bygone era is getting ready to be retired after serving patrons in downtown Calgary for nearly a century. The attendant-operated elevators in Arts Commons are getting a modern upgrade. Video producer Monty Kruger offers a nostalgic look at a unique piece of the city's history.
What you notice when you get into an attendant-operated elevator such as this is the architecture of the elevator, the etched glass, the brass components of the elevator. When you press the elevator button and the elevator comes down to the floor, the door will be opened by an attendant and you'll be greeted by an attendant, and the attendant will take you to the floor of choice. The elevators were constructed in 1929. These are what we believe to be the last attendant-operated elevators in Alberta. And as well, they've been operated by attendants since 1931. That's an exciting project for the modernization of the public building elevators. Going to the manual operation will provide reliability of the elevators for the tenants in the building. The mechanical equipment is beyond its life cycle, and we need to provide better reliability of the elevator cab service to bring staff up inside the building. There's cost savings to the City of Calgary in that right now. There's no components for these elevators on the shelf. There's a lot of custom machining that happens with the repairs, and it's quite expensive to perform that work. It does take quite a while to custom manufacture parts, and an elevator can be down for several weeks while we're waiting for those manufactured parts to arrive. The brass components and the etched glass components are being refinished and reinstalled to accommodate the automated elevator operation. We will maintain one elevator in complete operation during the project, and we should be finished the project approximately June, July of 2022.
What a beautiful elevator. Not something you say often. I don't think we have any manually operated elevators here in BC, but in North Vancouver at the Bank of Hamilton building, there is an elevator from 1933, and we're told that it's quite beautiful as well. One of the earliest on the North Shore. That's it for our show tonight. Thank you for watching.